Game over. Game over.
You're gonna need a bigger potion.
So simple.
I am Iron Man. This is a tasty burger.
Welcome to the InSession Film Podcast.
Welcome to episode 635 for May 5th, 2025, and I'm JD Duran.
And I'm Brendan Cassidy.
Hey, thanks for joining us this week, everybody, as we dig in further to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Just like
we
everyone
are going
else
to
is.
channel our Thunderbolt energy, and we're going to express all of our past traumas onto you all throughout this episode.
That
that's
sounds
the goal
no
here.
fun. I mean, Thunderbolts is fun. That doesn't sound any fun.
Yeah, maybe people don't want to hear that.
I mean,
but-
maybe it is kind of indicative of most of Marvel's output post-Endgame, is that it hasn't
be.
been very fun. So
it hasn't been fun for a lot of people.
It's been
That's
kind of
true.
traumatic for some people, hasn't it?
It has been traumatic. What hasn't been depressing, though, is the box office for Thunderbolts, because my goodness, it did pretty well out of the gate.
Yeah,
it
did pretty
did
good.
$74 million domestically. It's already done $160 million worldwide. And by all accounts, comparatively to other Marvel movies, that is admittedly on the lower end of the spectrum. However, I don't know if in the year of our Lord 2025, as I just noted, if we should be comparing this to other Marvel movies. Because
different.
this weekend a year ago, we all collectively freaked out and we all wondered if cinema was dead.
Oh, it's not dead.
If the
certainly
movies
not
were
dead.
even going to
There's-
survive.
There's more to that story as to why cinema is not dead right now. And most of it does not revolve around Thunderbolts, although Thunderbolts is helping the conversation. But to your point earlier about this still being on the lower end for most Marvel debuts. In fact, I think this was still slightly below Captain America Brave New World from earlier this year as far as its opening box office was concerned, its opening weekend box office specifically.
Yeah.
The big difference here is that Thunderbolts didn't cost $700 million.
Exactly.
It's not a cheap movie, but there's a little less budgetary restrictions to this one when compared to most of these others, we'll say.
Yeah, exactly. It did not cost $700 million to make. This is a film that doesn't have to make $1 billion to be profitable. However, and you know what will save cost, marketing cost that is? Sebastian Stan, go out and change all the posters, please. You go out and do it. That'll save us some money.
It will save money, but it also creates this kind of positive aura around the movie that the cast is so like excited about this movie that it clearly seems to suggest that they love the movie that they made, right?
Yeah.
And if anything, that should be positive word of mouth right there. So if anything, saving money on marketing costs while giving the film more proper marketing. I mean, that's everyone wins, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as we noted, by MCU standards, maybe it's a little bit lower than others in that family. However, $74 million, given the state of affairs, certainly nothing to scoff at. It's no Sinners, but it's out of the gate doing very well. And here's the other thing. I mean, it is a Thunderbolts movie.
Yeah.
It is a group of anti-heroes, misfit characters. It's not your Captain Americas, your Iron Mans, your Spider-Mans. It's going to have to do some work. And if you listen to our review of Thunderbolts, which is available right now, go and check it out. We had a really fun and thorough conversation on the film. If you ask us, the film did do the work. But it's not just us. The conversation, the discourse on this film was rapid fire over the weekend. I think many people understandably were reserved, not just because it features characters they may or may not be aware of. That's certainly part of it, but also the MCU factor. Marvel has been struggling over phases 4 and 5. And they need to do some work to get people back into the theaters. I think this film did do the work. The conversation did spark a lot of buzz. I think this film is going to have legs.
I hope it does.
I think it'll have
really
more legs,
do.
maybe even than Brave New World.
Oh, I think it will. I mean, primarily because I just think it's a better movie, and I think people will recognize that. Which is why I'm not ready to say that Thunderbolts has just single-handedly saved the MCU. It's way too early to say those words, but it's clearly a step in the right direction. It's clearly where they need to be going.
It is 100%. It's where they need to be going. And I think this will create even more buzz for Fantastic Four as that film comes out here in another 2 months. I believe that is the end of July when that film comes out. But they, for the first time in a long time, especially on the film side, they've had a big win here. A big win. Now, I know people might point to some of the television work. Daredevil Born Again, I thought was okay. I like Daredevil Born Again. I'm not as high on it as some others are.
Okay.
But I thought Daredevil Born Again was fine.
That's right. We still have Ironheart coming out, don't we?
We still have Ironheart coming out. Yes, we do.
I forgot about that.
I know, it's crazy.
I think Marvel forgot about that one too.
I know. On the film side of things, though, I guess you could point back to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I'm talking in terms of quality. I guess you could talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. That film obviously did very well financially, but I don't know if it moved the needle as far as our collective consensus on the MCU.
Let's just say this. The doubters of the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine didn't win them over. Now, Thunderbolts, I think, is more likely to win those doubters over.
I agree. Totally agree with that. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I think collectively a lot of people really liked. And, but that film also came out at it was right off the heels of Quantumania, which was not good at all.
There was nowhere to go but up with that movie.
And Phase 4, most people were kind of meh on. You and I might be a little higher than a lot of other people, but when you're talking about the general audience, most people didn't love Phase 4. And then you tackle on Quantumania to kick off Phase 5, and people are just like, I don't know. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is certainly a breath of fresh air at that time. But Guardians 3, now Thunderbolts, is that enough to move people in the right direction? I guess we'll see. We'll see what happens as we get to Fantastic Four. But I do think the big difference is obviously the direction of the MCU. When Guardians 3 came out, there was still uncertainty with Jonathan Majors. Are they going to stick with Kang? Are we going in a new direction? So the MCU was still rudderless at that time.
And even at that point, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 kind of felt like an outlier in the extended universe in a way. And the Guardians trilogy really does in totality in many ways. I would argue that's really the only true trilogy of the MCU. The Captain America movies, there's 3 of them. I don't think that's a trilogy because they're too dependent on the other movies in between them. It's really more like 3 Captain America movies in an overarching franchise. But the Guardians movies felt very much like their own thing while still feeding into the broader thing. And in a way, I think that's what Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 kind of was. So it may not have won people over because it felt like it still kind of existed in its own creative bubble.
In its own little vacuum.
Totally fair. And that's how James Gunn operates. But that was kind of refreshing about it. I think Marvel at least acknowledges they need those one-offs every now and then that kind of feed into their own separate thing as opposed to just the grand scope of it all.
And perhaps the irony of that, as we talked about in our review, Thunderbolts, a lot of that same idea is applicable to Thunderbolts. Now, of course, there is some larger MCU context that is helpful. If you've seen Ant-Man and the Wasp, Falcon and Winter Soldier, if you want to include Bucky, his inclusion in the MCU films and Avengers and all that sort of stuff, that is helpful. But generally, Thunderbolts is a film that wants to function on its own terms. And it does so quite wonderfully, if you ask us.
There's a big difference between binge watching a TV series and then just watching a movie on its own terms that doesn't treat the surrounding films around it as homework. And Thunderbolts is very much the latter.
I agree. And that's what gives me hope for Fantastic Four, because until we get to the ending and we see what happens to that world, it is a film that is going to function in the multiverse on its own planet with its own storyline.
Yeah.
It probably won't be until the end of that film, the very end of the film, where it starts to connect the dots. Especially if you've seen Thunderbolts in the post-credit scene that we see there. So,
it's we talked about this with Thunderbolts. It's very much pulling inspiration from the first Avengers, Joss Whedon's film from 2012. The framework of it, the narrative flow of it, there are very literal plot parallels that mean opposite things, but it's very much calling attention to that. Fantastic Four First Steps is probably going to be the same thing, but for Captain America, the First Avenger. It's probably going to feel like even the retro vibes are kind of similar. And then that's a film that all of a sudden by the end became a direct tie-in to the Avengers.
Exactly.
That's what I think Fantastic Four is going to do.
Wholeheartedly agree. I think that is a great comp. That is almost, I would say that's exactly what we're going to see. I would almost say exactly that's how that film is going to play out. And I can't wait for that. So we'll see how that moves the needle with the MCU. I do think Thunderbolts will start to move the needle. I think it is getting people more excited. I haven't seen this kind of discourse on the positive end of the spectrum for the MCU in quite a long time. The people that did go and see it, they loved it. There was a lot of praise, a lot of buzz for the film. So I am glad to see that it is doing well to begin. 160, and especially, I cannot emphasize enough, this time last year, it was bleak. It was real bleak. And the rest of May did not get any better. I do think this year that's going to be very different. I think Final Destination Bloodlines is going to do well. Mission Impossible is obviously going to do well. So this May, I think there's a lot to look forward to. It's going to be different than last May, but just to see with my own eyes, theaters aren't dead.
Movies still exist.
It still exists for the time being, because there was news that President Trump, he might be killing the film industry altogether.
I have questions. None of them are good, but I have questions.
I have questions too. Now, there's been a little bit of backpedaling from the Trump camp since that initial report was out there that he was going to tariff all of these movies coming from overseas, which is kind of hilarious because Marvel just moved their home base from Atlanta to London with Fantastic Four. So that puts Disney in a bind.
But I do like the backpedaling on that, as if to suggest that this tariff announcement was just a scare tactic, but I don't think it actually was. But if that's what it ends up being, then okay, maybe it'll move a needle in a different direction. There is obviously a problem with regard to the way the American film business is operating. Jobs are on the fringes, right? Like we obviously advocate for bringing more jobs to the film business in general, right? Especially with the ongoing threat of AI.
Yeah.
But this is certainly arguably not the right answer for that.
No.
But it does lead to a lot of questions. Like, what does it mean when he says non-US movie? Does that just mean an American production being shot overseas? Does it mean maybe if they do visual effects work or post-production work overseas, as many of these companies are stationed overseas now? I don't know what this means. I don't know how you tariff a movie, let alone how you tariff a non-US movie. Especially what does this mean for foreign language films? And is this going to then limit US production companies from buying the distribution rights for them? There are a lot of questions I don't know the answers to, and yet every time I come to some hypothetical answer, I get scared for the artistic result that could come from it.
Well, Trump's initial post ended with, "We want movies made in America again." Of course, playing into his mantra there.
Yeah.
That very clearly says to me anyway that he wants the movies made in America. So if the production is overseas, even it's from, let's say, Disney, an American company, there's going to be a tariff on that film because it was made overseas. So he wants to incentivize movies being made in America, giving Americans jobs. But there really is no incentive at this point. I mean, most movies are made overseas, whether it be Canada, or not necessarily overseas, but either in Canada or in the UK, other places that, you know, it's cheaper to make movies there. Or
the problem is that it's not addressing the root cause, which is that the incentives to make movies in America, they're just not there, whether it be through tax credits or through the job market itself. It is a problem that needs to be addressed, but I don't think this is the way to go about it. And on top of that, it also limits artistic integrity in some ways, because how many movies out there, especially big movies that we love, are kind of dedicated to the global aspect. I mean, the Mission Impossible movies are all about that. So what does that mean? These movies are now going to be shot on a soundstage in Atlanta? Like, that's not interesting to me. There's something kind of comforting when a director has their own artistic license to take their story where they want to take it.
Yeah.
Sometimes that means going overseas to serve that story.
Exactly. I mean, look at Mission Impossible. That is a series of films where the protagonists are clearly an American agency, but they're working overseas. So we're in every country except the United States most of the time. But that's the foundation of those films. Yeah. They're not meant to be shot in America. And those movies aren't made on sound stages. They obviously go to these places for real because that's the Tom Cruise way, of course. Yeah. And they want to do all of that pragmatically. Are you going to punish Tom Cruise because that's how he wants to make his movies? Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Good luck with that.
There's no way they're just going to eat the cost. They're going to have to get their way on that.
Yeah. And that's why so much of the memeing going on today was that Tom Cruise gave Trump a call, and that's why all of a sudden he's backpedaling. I don't know if that's short out, but I imagine it is.
Didn't someone play the audio clip of Tom Cruise freaking out on set about wearing masks during COVID, and they kind of used that as the basis of what that phone call may have been?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I mean, there was several great memes about it, but it's not just Tom Cruise. The aforementioned Disney, if they're shooting Marvel movies in London because they're more incentivized to do that, I can't fathom that Disney is going to be happy with a tariff on their biggest movies coming to the United States, where obviously the U.S. is one of the biggest, if not the biggest market in the world. So yeah, I just, that's why there's so much reservation from a lot of people on the reality of this. Yeah. But if Trump does pull the trigger on it, it's going to kill the industry. It would kill it.
It's not, and the problem, like I said, it's not addressing the real root of this problem existing. If you want movies to be made in America again, or at least you want to be able to incentivize them properly, the root cause needs to be addressed on that incentivization, and how that operates internally. Because all this is then going to do is create a form of punishment against those that are doing it in a different way, that are incentivizing their filmmakers properly. And then there's just going to be pushback. It's just another trade war waiting to happen.
To me, it is really, really stupid, really dumb to tariff the production of the movies, especially when, if, and again, I know we're kind of assuming because the details of this are ambiguous.
They're very murky.
But if the idea is to tariff movies being made outside of the U.S., whether that be in Canada, the UK, Mexico, wherever, and we're talking about big studio films from Sony and Warner Brothers and Disney, they're obviously not going to be happy with that. Tariffing those movies, not a great result. But if the idea is we're just going to tariff foreign films coming into the United States, what is the point of that? How? Tariffing all we imagine as light, who does that serve? What is the point in any of that?
That like I said earlier, that just creates this sort of antagonizing between the U.S. and other nations. Then that's all that it fuels.
Dumb.
How do you
So
even
dumb.
tariff a movie? Like, what does that even mean? Tariffing the production costs, tariffing its budget if it's then shot overseas, tariffing just the post-production work if it's done overseas. Do you tariff ticket sales? How does this differentiate from streaming platforms that go straight to streaming?
I don't know. But that's the stupidity of it. This whole thing is dumb. Really, really dumb. I don't know if there's anything else I can add to it.
It just makes me laugh. Just the economics of it. Just like, I have so many questions. So
dumb. But the backpedaling is at least promising. I do love that, because that means someone is in his ear, whether that's Bob Iger or Tom Cruise or both, some combination. Someone is in Trump's ear going, this is stupid. Let's not do that.
Yeah.
But they're not going to say that now. So they're going to backpedal in their Trumpian way, which is just ridiculous and absurd. But anyway, had to bring it up because, my God, if that does happen, then the podcast is over because there's no movies.
It's hilarious. The backpedaling happened pretty quickly, though. It was like less than 24 hours before we got some added reservations about that news, which was pretty funny to me.
Utterly ridiculous. All right, Brennan, let's talk about t-shirts, swag,
merch,
the InSession Film store,
toys, stuff.
A great way to support us. We would really appreciate it if you go and check out our merch. We have some great designs available for you on our store. One of them is this new, I'm wearing it again, Film Score Junkie.
Film Score Junkie.
If you're a film score nerd like I am, you're going to love this shirt.
It's going to be
a logo, and
it's going to be perfect for those who just came out of Thunderbolts saying, who the heck is Son Lux? I got to listen to those guys.
So good. I haven't stopped listening to that score because I'm a junkie. I'm a film score junkie. I think I told the story on our Thunderbolts review, but I was listening to that score while getting ready for my beer league hockey game. That's how much of a junkie I am. Okay. That's not a typical score you listen to get hyped up for sports. But I did because I'm a nerd.
I don't know. I could see that. I could certainly see that. I mean, I wouldn't pick a score track because, you know me, I'm a musician. I'm a rock guy, so I'll probably be playing like Spoon Man by Soundgarden to come out of my entrance. But you playing some Son Lux to back up your entrance, that makes a lot of sense for you. That tracks.
Yeah, I love it. I can't get enough. I'm a junkie. You can go and check out that design. Maybe you're a film score junkie and you can't get enough of the Sinners soundtrack.
Now that's a soundtrack
that plays
right
into
there.
you being a junkie, but also we have a design up on our store. I'm like Jesus because I love Sinners is the design we have up there. I see you go and check that one out as well. We have a bunch of different designs. Go to InSessionFilm.com. I mess this up every time. InSessionFilm.dashery.com. You can go to InSessionFilm.com, InSessionFilm.com/store.
Yeah.
Either way, you will find all of the designs and that we have available. They come in different colors, all kinds of options. But yeah, InSessionFilm.dashery.com. There you can see all of the designs. You can customize the shirt in terms of size, color, all that sort of stuff. Go check it out. Get a fun t-shirt. It helps support the show. If you have any ideas as far as t-shirts go, if you want us to make one, we can come up with a design. Just let us know. Hit me up.
Yeah.
Well,
some of our listeners are more clever than us.
Exactly. I would love to. I love coming up with ideas and playing in Photoshop and coming up with these designs. It's a lot of fun. Sometimes I spend way too much time doing that when I have
so all of a sudden like a couple
do.
hours go by and then I got no work done.
Exactly. But I love it. I love it nonetheless. So hit us up. Again, InSessionFilm.dashery.com or InSessionFilm.com/store. Either way, you'll see everything there. And we appreciate everyone that gets an InSession Film t-shirt. All right, Brendan, let's talk about coffee. I love coffee. I need it.
I die without it.
Drink it all day, every day. It is the best, which is why I love Coffee Cult, because they source specialty grade coffee, Arabica coffee only, from all over the world. We're talking about the premium coffee bean.
Yeah.
They
We're-
go the extra mile to
Yeah.
make sure that it is, one, sourced ethically, and
Yeah.
two, that it is the highest quality possible.
No defects.
The highest.
Nothing
No
like that.
defects. They remove all of the bad beans out of the package. They only roast the good ones, which, you know, means that maybe it's a little pricier than your store-bought coffee, but the quality it's unmatched. And I
Yeah.
dare you to do the challenge. Do it.
Oh yeah.
Go
You
to
ever,
the
hear the
store.
saying? Yeah, you ever hear the saying? You get what you pay for. This is exactly that.
Get yourself a bag of, let's say, coffee called dark roast. Get that. Go to the store and get your, I won't name the brand, dark roast that costs like $3 a can, and then give them both a shot. You will taste the difference. I promise you.
Absolutely.
I promise you. Yeah, we're talking gourmet high-end coffee here, and it is absolutely worth every single penny. It's great. So go to coffeecult.com, coffee with a K, cult with a K, coffeecult.com. At checkout, use our code ISF25. Again, that code is ISF25 for 15% off your order. And for orders $49 or more in the United States, you get free shipping. Probably
Heck
don't
yeah.
say that enough. But free shipping on orders $49 or more. And you can use that code ISF25 for 15% off. I promise you're going to love this coffee. It is worth
So
every
good.
single penny.
So
it is the
good.
best. So go check it out, coffeecult.com, and we thank them for their support. All right. On this show, we are going to do, Brendan and I, we're going to do a consensus ranking of the MCU post-Endgame. So for phases 4 and 5, Thunderbolts just concluded phase 5. We are going to be moving into phase 6 once we get to Fantastic Four, first steps in July,
Absolutely.
as we noted. So we thought it would be fun to do a little consensus ranking. And to be a little bit more clear on that, especially if this is your first time joining us, Brendan has his own individual ranking, of course. I have my own ranking.
Yeah.
The idea of this exercise, though, is for us to put our heads together, to talk about it, and come up with a ranking together. So we'll discuss it. We'll look at the disparities on our list, and we'll try to come up with a consensus ranking between the two of us.
Yep.
That is the fun of this exercise. So to recap the movies, and we're just talking about the movies, at least to begin with. We'll see how this goes.
We'll see how much time we have. Maybe we'll do like a little preamble, a little epilogue at the end of the TV shows, the Disney Plus content, and just see how things weigh out there.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. But here are the movies we're going to be discussing: Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, Spider-Man No Way Home, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Phase 5, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, Deadpool and Wolverine, Captain America, The Brave New World, and Thunderbolts Asterix. That's the films.
14 films, I think, right?
Yes, I believe we have 14 films here to discuss. So let's begin. We have to rank all of these together. Do we want to start at the bottom or at the top?
Well, that's a good question, because I think the middle section is where it's going to be more difficult for us.
Yeah.
I think we can already say what number 1 is and what the very last place one is. We both agree on that. I know we do.
Yeah. I think that's true. I have Thunderbolts at number 1 here,
Me too.
and I have Thor Love and Thunder last.
Me too.
Okay. So there we go. The bookends.
The bookends are
Complete.
done. The bookends are done.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. So I guess, now the question is, where do we go next?
Yes.
I guess, do we want to start on a positive note, or do we want to conclude on a more positive note?
Well, I will say this. I do think 2, 3, and 4 we might have to discuss, but I want to throw this at you.
Okay.
Would Ant-Man Quantumania be second last for you?
No.
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 Black Widow?
No.
No. Okay. Then I retract my statement then. I retract
Now, keep in
my
mind, when I
statement.
say it that way, mean, most of the films in the middle crop here, I would give the exact same grade to, so it really doesn't mean much. But
Okay.
there are at least 2 other films that I would put in the bottom 3, easily below those other ones.
Okay.
And I will say, it might lead to a bit of maybe a bit of a pushback from you. It certainly would be a pushback from listeners. I'll say that.
Okay. Well, let's start up at the top then, and we'll work our way there.
Okay. I feel like I feel like we have the same top 5. It's just the order
Okay.
that we'll have to maybe go back and forth on.
I was gonna say because 2 and 3, and I would assume 4 on my list would be in your top 5 as well. So
Yeah.
the next 3 films I have are Spider-Man: No Way Home, Eternals, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Those are my next 3.
We're pretty close. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll say this. My top 5 right now, and I'll go from 5 to 1. My number 5 is Spider-Man: No Way Home. Number 4 is Shang-Chi. Number 3 is Eternals. Number 2 is Guardians Volume 3. And number 1 is Thunderbolts.
Okay.
So we're not too far off. It's just a matter of how much weight do we want to put on these
okay.
ones.
right.
And I will say, like, in a weird way, I think I kind of want to put Guardians at number 2, Guardians Volume 3 specifically, only because I didn't love that one when it first came out. But much like with Guardians Volume 2, I've been learning to love it more. It has been growing on me. And Volume 3, I've been having the exact same reaction to. There's a lot about that movie that just hasn't left my mind. It really does go for some type of emotional, like, sense of finality that we just don't really get in these movies, and I really appreciate that. I think it makes it kind of a rarity in this new crop of Marvel movies we're talking about.
I will never, ever recover from "You were never meant to be a destroyer. You were meant to be a dad." That's the next T-shirt.
Why
I didn't I think of that? That's the next T-shirt.
That's your shirt. But I'm kind of with you. I think I was weirdly more moved by Drax's arc concluding as opposed to Rocket's, even though it is mostly Rocket's movie. And I'm not, trying to downplay the whole Rocket arc of it, but there is something about the way Dave Bautista handles that character.
It's so good. It's so good. I mean, I love both of them equally. I'm not choosing between children, so to speak, because I love both of those arcs equally. But that is to say, I agree. There's a pathos to that film that is formidable. That I love. And look, when it comes to my ranking there, I mean, I have No Way Home, Eternals, and Volume 3 kind of back to back to back. Flip a coin. You can reorder those 3 however you want. I will not lose sleep at night.
I have a suggestion. This is how I would try and weigh it, just to find maybe a middle ground between you and I. I almost feel like, well, let me first ask you this, because I think I saw you tweet your current ranking of the MCU in general right now.
Yeah.
Is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 your favorite Guardians film?
Yes. Yeah.
Let's put that at number 2, just because we have such like high reverence for the uniqueness of this one. And then maybe, given the weight of how eventful Spider-Man No Way Home was, we could put that at number 3. And I only say that, or do you really feel like maybe that's more of a weight to put it at number 2 instead?
For No Way Home?
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, it's kind of a toss-up, but the more I think about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, I like you, it hasn't left my mind, and I'm starting to come around on that film maybe being 2. There's even a possibility
that might be 1 for you as you sit on it further.
Yeah.
Well, then I think that answers that question. Let's put it at number 2 then.
Yeah. I mean, I still have to sit on it a little bit further, because I do really love Thunderbolts a lot, and it's so fresh and new and distinct that it's possible that my judgment is clouded by recency bias. I'm willing to admit. But yeah, that is to say, especially off the heels of this conversation and talking about Volume 3, like I'm dying to see it again. I haven't really seen it since it came out in theaters. I would really love to give that one another go, but
Sure.
yeah, I think my like the ranking I posted on social media as far as post-Endgame goes was maybe a little presumptuous, or I didn't really think about it as thoroughly as I could have, because it's one of those things where everyone's doing it, so you just put a list together real fast.
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of
It's like everyone's doing it. It's going viral. Perhaps let's see if I
So
can get some
that's it.
likes from her tweet. It's
Yeah, because volume 3, yeah, I might honestly, I might even have that at 1. I'm okay to leave Thunderbolts at 1 for the sake of this exercise, but to your point, yes, we can put volume 3 at 2.
Yeah, I think Thunderbolts is still a better movie than Guardians Volume 3. I think it's a smoother experience and a more efficient and consistently told movie. But even so, some of the messiness of Guardians Volume 3 is kind of one of its best attributes in a weird way. And like I said, when I first saw that film, I was kind of mixed on it, mixed to positive, but it just hasn't left my mind. And I
it.
think that's the sign of something
Deeply,
special,
deeply
especially
love it,
given
yeah.
this, most of these movies kind of fall into this category of like CGI soup, as you call it, that just feel more like content than they do movies. And I feel like
Yeah.
you'll notice a theme with the way we rank these for those listening is that we tend to prefer the ones that feel like movies as opposed to content.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, Thunderbolts 1, Guardians 2. I would want to put No Way Home at 3.
I'm fine with that. Yeah. I don't like it quite as much as you. I have a few issues with it, but there is, it captures the ethos of Spider-Man more so than I think any of the MCU Spider-Man films have. And I give that a huge pass then. So I think that gives it an edge for sure.
Yeah. There's a version of that movie where all of these things coming together collectively is just a total misfire. And I don't think that it is at all. Is it a little messy? I mean, given all of the arms that it has, it's a miracle that the film exists at all. It's like, or functions coherently in any way.
Yeah, I think there are definitely moments where the film is perhaps held together by some pretty decent editing. Because there are clearly moments, especially when all villains are introduced, maybe in the first act somewhere, where it almost feels as though I don't really believe that any of them were on set together. I don't think they ever met in person. But there is more clever editing happening there to maybe mask some of those imperfections. So it's a movie that feels maybe held together by duct tape as opposed to Scotch tape holding Brave New World together, right?
But I think it speaks to the prowess of great acting, because you can certainly tell. You can certainly tell that there's a little bit more CGI work than you would like there to be, but given the scheduling of everyone involved, if that's how that film has to be made, then that's fine. And the actors are wholly committed.
Yeah,
like Jamie Foxx, I think is really good. I mean, really everyone's really good. And then especially when you get the Spider-Mans of it all into it. And I think the emotional prowess of that film is as good as anything Marvel has ever done. So, and that's ultimately the beating heart of the film. That's what it's about. Yeah. And it gets that right.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, Eternals is just completely overlooked. And I want to champion that anytime we get a chance to. So.
Yeah. So then how's this for our top 5 collectively? Thunderbolts, Guardians Volume 3, Spider-Man No Way Home, Eternals, and then Shang-Chi.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay.
That's good.
That was easy. Now this is the hard part.
Yeah, so the middle is where things get real crazy. So all right, well, where do you want to go next? Like what's on your list after this?
Well, yeah, maybe we'll just keep going in order from top to bottom. The next 2 films I have after our collective ranking of Shang-Chi at number 5, if I'm looking at my personal ranking here, number 6 is where I have Black Panther: Wakanda Forever.
Same.
Okay, that's easy.
Easy.
And then number 7 is where I have Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness.
Also same.
The more I talk about how difficult something is going to be for us, I should just not say a damn word.
It may just come down to the bottom Well, it is very objectively, I guess, now that we're to the back half of the list.
It is,
It's going to
yeah.
come down to how do these lesser films stack up to each other, I guess, is going to be the ultimate question here.
And I think we look at these movies maybe a little bit differently. There are just certain things that I like and dislike about some of them that maybe I put more weight on than you do, which is why when you said earlier, is Ant-Man Quantumania or Black Widow on my bottom three, and I almost very verbosely said no.
Yeah.
That's because there are things about Spider-Man Far From Home that I think are more egregious. That's in my bottom three. I don't think that's a good movie at all. But I think you kind of like that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I have that one at 8. That will probably be our biggest disparity, or certainly up there.
Okay.
I look, that film has some egregious blemishes. I will not deny it, but I do think there are some good elements of it. And on the whole, I do like what it's aiming for, even if it's not all there in execution. So it's a film that I still enjoy. I think it maintains the MCU Spider-Man spirit. It's full of heart. It's got great humor that I think is really charming. And that's ultimately what won me over in the end. But yeah, that script is uneven and it doesn't always work. But as far as its central dualities and what Peter is having to battle in regards to being the hero and also wanting normalcy, I like that in that film. I think it gets it more right than it doesn't.
I like that stuff. I think it's a movie I would like a lot more if it didn't come out right after Avengers Endgame, which was all about this celebration of Tony Stark's sacrifice. And Spider-Man Far From Home is, in a way, kind of arguing that Tony Stark was an asshole. And in a way, kind of has validity in those points, given Jake Gyllenhaal's character of Mysterio and how he's motivated by that. He actually, you kind of understand his point of view. I think it comes way too soon, given that sacrifice, and it tries to go back and forth and have it both ways in that movie. And I just don't think that works.
Yeah.
I think that if anything, it's maybe less on the movie and more so the when it was released that hurts the movie.
That's fair.
For me.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, God bless Jake Gyllenhaal. I do think he's going for it. I think he's having a lot of fun and doing his best. The writing of Mysterio is lazy and too contrived for my liking. And that is ultimately the element of the film that works the least. There's no doubt about it. Yeah. I guess maybe it comes down to what we've always talked about with Marvel. These films have always been about the hero's journey. It's never really been about the villains. That's not really their forte, which is, probably says something that at least two of my favorite films are Civil War and Thunderbolts, where emotions are working as kind of the antagonists, so to speak.
Yeah. They have symbolic villains.
Yeah. When these films are utilizing a traditional antagonist, in this case, Mysterio, and Mysterio is a great character, obviously, in the comics.
Yeah.
Works wonderfully in that form, worked great in the Spider-Man television series, the animated series, because you can do a lot more in that format as well. In this context, despite Gyllenhaal's performance, and he is able to make up some of those gaps, but he can't fully make up for the writing.
Yeah.
But again, I would argue that these films are not about the villain characters. You can't excuse it, but if it's going to be about the hero's journey, get that right. And I think Far From Home does.
Yeah, it's more so the Tony Stark aspect of it that really rubs me the wrong way. It's kind of like the Black Widow of it all, and maybe that's a transition to the movie Black Widow. I think both Black Widow and Spider-Man Far From Home kind of fit into a similar critical spectrum for me. I have similar problems with both of them, and that really the biggest problem with both those movies, I think, is that they came out at the wrong time. Black Widow is a movie that should have come out earlier, and especially given Natasha's own sacrifice in Endgame, to then release her own movie afterwards and to almost sideline her in her own movie and give more weight to her family. I like those dynamics. I actually think the movie Black Widow has some of the highest highs of the remaining films we've yet to talk about. but there is something more frustrating about how she is treated in her own movie, kind of like how Tony Stark is treated in Far From Home as sort of an after effect for a great heroic sacrifice in the movie that directly preceded it, which is like that. That's why I can argue that maybe these are better movies by comparison, but I think they're some of the more frustrating ones of the remaining ones that we're talking about. And that's I guess the long story short there, that's what makes them hard to rank for me.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, I am not nearly as frustrated with Far From Home. Like I said, I still really like that film. I think its highs are still really good and make up for its lows. Black Widow, on the other hand, I do agree with you there. That one to me is one of the most frustrating because it has some really, really good elements of it, but I also just find it so middling. And you couple that with the timing of it all as you're talking about, and it does make it for a bit of a tepid experience.
Yeah, I will say if we're on these two films right now specifically, Black Widow and Far From Home, which again I think are probably two of the more frustrating ones that we have to talk about here yet. Black Widow I actually have in my personal ranking at number 8, and Far From Home at my number 12. But that's more just given how those levels of frustration affect me, maybe more so than others. I think the only reason why I have Black Widow a little bit higher is that when compared to Quantumania or the Marvels or Captain America Brave New World, there are at least enough moments in Black Widow that feel like an actual tangible movie. And I'm giving more weight to that, but I'm not really married to having it ranked at number 8. I don't necessarily need to do that. But I do agree with you as far as it being one of the more frustrating films of Phases 4 and 5.
Yeah, it is frustrating because again, I mean, I guess I laid out all my reasons, but I will say now that we're talking about it a little bit further, especially in this context, I could bump it up a few spots. I think I could land at number 10 on my list. In fact, I might go ahead and do that on Letterboxd.
For Black Widow specifically?
For Black Widow. I did have it at 12, but honestly, as we're talking about it, it is maybe the most frustrating, but it's the most frustrating because of its potential. And I do think it has a higher ceiling than, let's say, Brave New World or Deadpool and Wolverine.
Oh, yeah.
It just doesn't come together, frustratingly so, obviously.
It has some
but I could bump that up to 10. So I guess depending on where this conversation goes, because there's obviously some more.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah.
Some more films we can fill in here.
Maybe we can't rank it just yet because I think we need to figure out what we want to put at our number 8 collectively.
Well, let me ask you this, because I know we've talked about No Way Home, or not No Way Home, Far From Home. We mentioned Black Widow. The Marvels is a movie that you do like, right?
I don't hate it. No.
Where do you have that ranked on your list?
So I said my number 8 is Black Widow. Number 9 for me is actually the Marvels.
Okay. That's where I have it as well.
Okay.
So maybe
that's maybe like that could be like a tentative spot for it right now, depending on how we want to rank these other ones. Maybe it could shift, but
what I was going to suggest is that we move that up to 8. Maybe follow that up with Black Widow, because at the very least, I think we can agree on those two. And the reason I suggest that is because obviously I have Far From Home at 8, and you're way lower on it than that. So the middle ground is going to be probably after those two movies. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I even though I think, let's say, a movie like Black Widow is something I might appreciate as a movie more than the Marvels, you and I at least have more common ground on the Marvels, and that's giving it that weight to push it up there. Yeah, it's exactly that's an okay movie. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. It's not particularly memorable, but I think it has some elements that showed potential. Once again, all of these movies showed potential. The one of these last ones that we're talking about, which make them all kind of frustrating to some degree or another.
The funny thing about the Marvels is that it doesn't have the highs as some of these others. And I would even include Deadpool and Wolverine in that, maybe even Brave New World. But I also don't think it has the lows as those two movies simultaneously.
Yeah,
Like it fits comfortably like right in this middle space where it doesn't have a high ceiling, it doesn't have a low floor. It's just kind of right there in the middle. Like in a charming, fun way, but just kind of right there in the middle.
It's kind of funny because if you look at the meta scores for all of these movies, the meta score for the Marvels, if I'm not mistaken, I think was right at 50% exactly.
Well, there you go. That makes sense to me.
So then okay, there's 14 movies here. Let's put it right in the middle. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
So we have the Marvels
it is the
at
most
8 then.
It is the most egregiously fine movie of these 14.
Exactly. Very, very okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't hate it. Don't love it. It was totally fine.
Which is
adequate.
Sad.
I enjoyed it.
Which is sad. I mean, for most of these Marvel movies, that sadly has become a positive endorsement.
I know. It is a bit saddening when okay is the bar that you have to climb over.
Okay is now officially a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes for one of these.
Exactly. But given Phase 4 and 5, that's ultimately where Marvel landed. It's a self-inflicted wound.
So how do we want to do this? At number 8, we put the Marvels. At number 9, Black Widow, and then maybe number 10, Far From Home.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
I think so too. And a movie like Far From Home, I am willing to concede on that one, especially primarily because I don't think it's that bad as a movie. It's more so the frustrating timing of it all that I have a hard time overlooking with that one.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay. So that gets us to 10. So then we have the bottom 4, which includes Deadpool and Wolverine, Brave New World, Quantumania, Thor: Love and Thunder. And we've already established Thor: Love and Thunder is 14. So really it's just the last 3 here.
Yeah, last 3.
So where do you want to go with these 3?
If we spend more than 30 minutes arguing over Ant-Man, Quantumania, Captain America, Brave New World, or Deadpool and Wolverine,
I know.
We need to get more hobbies.
What are we doing here? Yeah, I don't think we should spend a lot of time debating it. And look, I don't really have a lot of fire for any of these movies. I know a lot of people love Deadpool and Wolverine. Maybe you and I are in a bit of a minority here, but
yeah, maybe we should just start with that one just to rip the Band-Aid off. I will openly admit that's my number 13 of these 14.
Okay.
And there are some days where I think it actually is my least favorite of this whole crop.
Gotcha. I have that at 11. So we are on total ends of the spectrum here as far as these last 3 go. I don't think it's as bad as the other 2, especially Quantumania. But admittedly, I mean, obviously I have it at 11. I don't love the film, but there are aspects of it that I do really, really appreciate, especially the Channing Tatum of it all. By far my favorite element of the film. I'm so thrilled that he's coming back to Doomsday, that he's going to be a part of this new X-Men universe. Well, I guess he's sort of technically a part of it. I don't know how it's all going to work because he doesn't fit into the old X-Men canon, obviously, but he's somehow going to mold his way into Doomsday. And just there's something about the redemptive arc, the meta component of it that I just absolutely love. And I love the character. I absolutely love the character. He's one of my favorite X-Men. And I thought that was a fun little surprise in that film. And honestly, I had no idea. That was the one thing that was a fun little surprise. I was able to avoid that on Twitter. Thank God. That element of it I thought was really good. And there's always some fun Deadpool-y things that I enjoy. But I do think on the whole that is a really
I think
it's not a good looking movie.
I think it's a really rough movie for the most part, but I do like the Gambit stuff. I think for the sake of maybe just not pissing too many people off, I'm okay to put it at number 11. I just don't have the energy to fight for it in last place because I just don't care for it that much.
Fair.
But I also think when compared to something like Quantumania and Brave New World, there are at least sequences in Deadpool and Wolverine that are better crafted. The more I think about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, it only has two things about it that I truly admire that have stuck with me. And that's a movie I didn't hate when we first talked about it. We were kind of willing to defend it a bit.
Yeah, a little
And,
bit.
and weirdly, many of these movies, whether it be Quantumania or even Brave New World, we kind of fought for a little bit, even though we acknowledge we didn't really like, but they have soured for me as time went on. And I think with regard to Quantumania, the things that I put more emphasis on that I really liked and still like, it is Jonathan Majors' performance. I mean, say what you will about the man, that's a separate conversation, but I do think he's effective as Kang, and I think he's effective in that movie. And I love MODOK. I don't care what people say. I think MODOK is interesting. And these movies need to be more interesting. I don't like anything else in that movie, though. So I guess in a way, that's not really an endorsement at all. It's two minor things that kind of elevated the rest of it for me.
Look, I do think that the discourse around the film is a little exaggerated. I don't think it is the worst thing I've ever seen. It doesn't have very many highs. I think for the most part, it's a little bit of what we talked about with the Marvels, where I think it's fine, but then it gets to places where I do think it kind of breaks below that average ceiling or the average floor, excuse me.
Yeah.
And it does get quite messy, but for the most part, I can sit through that film. I can watch it and be unbothered by it. I certainly did not have the lighting issues that many people did. I could see everything pretty vividly.
Yeah. If anything, it was maybe more of a visual effects issue as opposed to a lighting issue.
Yeah, I remember that was a big talking point when the film came out. I think the Ant-Man and Cassie stuff mostly is effective.
So it's okay. Yeah, it's not that bad.
So like, it's one of those movies where like I'm probably closer to the Marvels than I am to it being like this extremely frustrating, I can't believe it squandered its potential. Like, it's not that kind of movie. It's mostly in that Marvels territory, but there are a few moments where it kind of, gets below its floor a little
That's
bit.
the thing. The Marvels is consistently at that middle ground. It never really wavers that far above it. Maybe until they get to the musical planet, which I wish they just committed to that bit a little bit more. But with Quantumania, there are moments where it does embrace its wackiness, and I think that's where it's at its best, and that's where it kind of elevates above that line. And then it just dips so far below that line in a few other spots. So it's definitely a more hit or miss affair. Some of those highs, those wacky highs, I do kind of appreciate, which is why I would certainly take Quantumania over Brave New World, and primarily because I think that wackiness is at least more interesting. And Brave New World, even though it's a movie that you and I had some level of appreciation for at times, we didn't love it. In fact, I think you can argue we didn't really care for it, but it's also a movie where if you sit back and judge it as a movie and how it's constructed as a movie, it is the flimsiest of almost all of these movies in some ways.
Yeah, you know what? I'm sitting here thinking about this list further, and we're talking about it, and I think even on my personal list, I'm going to bump Quantumania up a little bit over, like one spot over Brave New World, because Brave New World is a film that without The Incredible Hulk and without Eternals, I don't think there's much to appreciate about. Like, there's not much I really like about that movie.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We latched onto that idea of it being a sequel to very underappreciated movies.
Yeah.
But then it begs the question, did we respond positively to the movie just because of an idea or because it actually fulfilled in that promise? And
well, I think a little bit of, like, I mean, I think it fulfills it in a way that is somewhat satisfying, that we finally acknowledged Eternals. We finally acknowledged the Incredible Hulk. That's no longer the neglected stepchild of the MCU.
Yeah.
The problem is, should this have been a sequel to those movies instead of being a Captain America movie?
Well,
that's the biggest sin of the
especially
film.
a Captain America movie with Sam Wilson.
With
and
Sam
the whole
Wilson.
thematic idea of
Yeah.
a black Captain America, it almost makes Disney themselves the villains of the construction of this movie.
And that's it. And
that's kind of distasteful. That's actually really bad. Yeah.
It is. So is it satisfying to me as fans of The Incredible Hulk and Eternals that this film kind of functions as a sequel to those? Yeah, it kind of is. And I do think it does an okay job as a sequel to those movies. I just don't think this was the appropriate way to do it.
Oh, it was not. And even if you overlook that and look at how the film functions as a movie, how are the action sequences? How are the how's the narrative storytelling? How's the script writing? How is the editing? All of that is very choppy. It's the one movie here, and many of these movies have very similar issues as far as how they're constructed. But Brave New World almost felt incomplete. Like, it almost felt like an incomplete movie. In fact, it actually does feel like an incomplete movie, and that's pretty bad.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
I think we just talked ourselves into that at number 13.
Yeah, that at 13 is fine. If you want to do Quantumania at 12, Deadpool and Wolverine at 11, I can live with that.
You know what? I can. Yeah, I don't have the energy to try and put Deadpool and Wolverine in last place for no reason other than I just don't care for it.
Which is fine. And honestly, it's Deadpool and Wolverine, Quantumania. I guess I'm kind of just stuck like with those at the exact same spot. That's just kind of where I'm at with those.
What matters with this whole list is that, and I kind of tweeted this out. We sort of talked about this when you, myself, and Sharia Chavla were talking about Thunderbolts for our review for that movie. How Phase 4, I think in general, is certainly the more consistent one when compared to Phase 5. Most of Phase 4 I don't fully love, but it didn't waver as much as Phase 5 did. But Phase 5 had 6 movies, and it's amazing the disparity that I have between the best ones and the worst ones of Phase 5. Because Phase 5 was what? Thunderbolts and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Those are among the MCU's better movies in general, I think. Yeah. And then you have some of these other ones that we're talking about here that are among the worst movies that I think they've made.
Yeah.
Like, it's kind of amazing.
It is kind of funny because when we briefly brought this up at the beginning of our Thunderbolts review, which again, it's available if you want to go and listen and
please listen to it.
I noted that the chasm wasn't nearly as deep for me as it was for you. But now that we've done this exercise, I am closer to you than I wasn't previously. Because Deadpool and Wolverine and Brave New World and Quantumania have all dropped on my list. Or, I mean, Quantumania was already really low, but I've gotten even lower on Brave New World and Deadpool and Wolverine in this conversation. So that chasm absolutely did widen for me, especially when you couple that with, I've already loved Thunderbolts. Spoiler alert, I opened our review. My opening statement in the review was, that's a top 10 MCU film for me. And now that I've even inferred that Volume 3 could also be could be my favorite of this grouping here, that means that Volume 3 is in my top 10 MCU
so basically,
as well.
That means Phase 5 in its 6 movies gave you two of the very best MCU movies ever, and then 4 of the very worst MCU movies ever.
Of the worst. Yeah. Of the absolute worst. Yeah. And I mean, even like if I'm going to include the entirety of the MCU, I mean, they're at the very bottom of, like, the only thing that rivals them is some of the TV shows, like Echo, for example, and Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
Secret Invasion is right there with Thor: Love and Thunder. Like those two are easily the worst as far as I'm concerned.
I think many people would agree with that.
Yeah. But Echo is right there. Brave New, like all of the MCU, those, very much at the bottom, top 5 bottom as well. So it's not even just 4 and 5, but all of Marvel.
Yeah.
So yes, that chasm very much did deepen for me in this conversation.
It's kind of insane. And as you said, when we talk about that chasm, we're only talking about the 6 movies that came out in
the 6 movies.
In Marvel Phase 5 at this point. We haven't talked about the TV shows yet.
Yeah, well, and I think the irony of it, speaking of television, just talking about that chasm, Loki season 2 came out in Phase 5, and I would include Loki as one of the best things Marvel has ever done. So
I would
if you
agree
want
with
to
that.
talk about that chasm even further, you can certainly throw Loki into that mix as being like, you got Loki, you got Guardians, you got Thunderbolts, incredible stuff. And then at the bottom, you have these movies, and I guess you can throw Echo into that as well. And who knows with Ironheart, that's still to come out. Which is kind of weird because Ironheart is supposed to come out in the fall, if I'm not mistaken, right?
No, I actually think that's coming out in like
is it a
month.
summer? Oh, is it really?
I think
For
it
some
comes out
reason, I
before
thought it was-
Fantastic Four, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I mean, that would make sense because it's Phase 5.
Yeah.
For some reason in my head, it was slated for the fall.
You probably feel that way because much like what we talked about with Disney's Lilo and Stitch live action remake, we've been getting no marketing for that. And then
there's
all of a
no
sudden,
marketing for Ironheart at all.
Yeah, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden they drop a bunch of marketing for Lilo and Stitch. Now apparently it's being predicted as the biggest moneymaker of the summer. So I don't know. That's probably a different conversation.
June 24th. So you are right about that.
Okay.
And look, that makes sense. That makes sense because they have Ironheart listed as Phase 5. So, and Fantastic Four doesn't come out till July. So that makes a lot of sense. So we'll see on Ironheart. I don't know. I don't want to assume anything at this point, but Phase 5, bit weird in that regard. No doubt about that.
It is very strange. And I will say this about Phase 5. Maybe this is one of the best things I can say about Captain America Brave New World and why that movie did not work for me, but I did not like The Falcon and Winter Soldier when I first watched that. And watching Captain America Brave New World in context with that, man, if The Falcon and Winter Soldier was condensed down from a 6-episode series, I think it was 6 episodes, but if that was condensed down to a feature-length movie, that is the better Sam Wilson Captain America movie right there.
Yeah.
Tells a better story, and in a way, Brave New World made me appreciate that show a little bit more.
No, I did really like Falcon and Winter Soldier, despite its obvious blemishes. There are some writing aspects that clearly do not work, but I think the Bucky and Sam Wilson of it all, I do think is really good. The introduction to Walker, I think, is handled right for the most part.
Sure.
And even when it comes to the group, the Flag Smashers, was that the name of it? I'm trying to recall.
I don't remember.
Totally fair. Even if it's a little bit uneven, but what I like about the inclusion of that group is that it's a little bit of Zemo mixed with Thanos in Infinity War, where their tactics are questionable, even if their motives make a lot of sense. So like that element, and I guess speaking of Zemo, isn't he in that as well?
Oh yeah,
I think he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, I love Zemo. Give me all the Zemo you can.
We get that great. Like, it was kind of memeified of him dancing in the club.
Yeah.
But honestly, I recall not really loving the utilization of Zemo in that show in totality, but I love that episode and I just love that scene.
Yeah.
So I mean, Daniel Bruhl's just fun to watch.
I would have loved to have seen him be part of the Thunderbolts. That would have been cool.
Actually, he would have been a great Thunderbolt.
He would have been.
Yeah.
At any rate, like there's a lot to like about the show, even if it's kind of the editing and the storytelling is a bit messy, but I think its overall nucleus is good, like, and robust. Like, I think there's some good stuff there.
Yeah.
And especially when you include, what was the character's name that was in Brave New World? Bradley? Is that the character's name?
I think so.
Yeah, like the inclusion of that I thought was also really good. Like, that's a show that has some a little bit of what we were talking about earlier with some of these films. It has some really high highs. It just doesn't quite all come together as a whole. But when it's good, it's really good.
That show sticks the landing. I think that's really what saves it. But I think getting to that end point was a little frustrating. Not even a little. It was quite frustrating.
Yeah, maybe less so for me than it was for you, but willing to admit it definitely was a little uneven. But on the whole, I do really like it, and certainly like it, to your main point, much better as a Sam Wilson exploring what Captain America means to him. At least that show attempts to do that among all of its other Marvel stuff.
I agree.
Brave New World, I don't know what it was thinking. I don't know what it was. Very weird.
That was a very long-winded way of saying, yeah, Captain America Brave New World, one of the worst of these 14 movies.
Yeah. I don't know if we want to include the television series here, if you just want to talk about phase 4 and 5 on the whole.
I don't think we'd have
fit in here.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll have the time to maybe do a rank or a consensus ranking specifically of them and going back and forth there, because I think we have some pretty differing opinions on some of these Disney Plus shows. Not all of them, but I think as far as how we feel about them, I think your favorite of them all is WandaVision, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. If I were to rank these Disney Plus shows, I think WandaVision would be my number 4. With Loki being number 1. Hot take here, my number 2 is Agatha all along. And number 3 would be Moon Knight. Even though I acknowledge that Moon Knight's a messy show, but I think that one just gets by on some of its unhinged ambition that I really do appreciate.
Gotcha. Yeah, WandaVision is my number 1, not particularly close, although I do really love Loki as well. Loki seasons 1 and season 2 are really, really fantastic. Yeah. Those are my 1 and 2 respectively. WandaVision, every day I'm tempted to put that into my top 10 for the MCU.
Loki's in my top 10 for the MCU in total.
Yeah. WandaVision is very much right there. I might even have it right there next to Thunderbolts, which I think Thunderbolts is at number 9, so might have WandaVision right there at number 10. Really love it. Loki, though, would be in my top 15. Okay. No doubt about that. As far as the rest of these go, I'd probably have Moon Knight at number 3. Freaking love the ambition of that show. Again, like some of these others that we've talked about, it doesn't wholly work, but my God, I love it.
But here's the thing. It fails in more interesting ways when compared to some of these other movies that fail for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. Number 4 for me would probably be She-Hulk. I love the meta component of it. I think it's really fun.
Okay.
Like it's fully committed to its gimmick and has the greatest time. I absolutely had a ball with She-Hulk. And there was 9 episodes to that, so it wasn't quite as restricted as some of these other shows were. Really liked She-Hulk a lot. So that I'd probably have that at 4, and then Agatha at 5. That's probably my 5 there.
Okay.
Again, I'm doing this off the cuff.
Yeah, I'm looking at my list on the other screen here, and yeah, I'm not quite as high on She-Hulk as you are, but it's not a movie. It's a show I do have at least some appreciation for, given some of the directions it chooses to go to and some of its I don't give a shit attitude. I'll simply say I kind of do admire that. Certainly like it more than Echo and Secret Invasion, which are probably my 2 least favorite of any of the Disney Plus shows.
Okay. Fair enough. I thought She-Hulk was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it a lot. I will say, actually, now that I'm thinking about this a little bit, and there was one that I did forget, Agatha for sure is very much in the 5, as is Moon Knight.
Okay.
So those absolutely my 4. If I was gonna maybe remove She-Hulk, and I still really like it a lot, but the other one I would actually probably include in here is Hawkeye. Like that, like the emotional nucleus of that show, I think, is also fantastic, and that's honestly more Thunderboltsy than any of these other shows.
True.
That whole show is about, I guess, less about depression and trauma and more so about grief, but emotionally
does kind of feed into
kind of the same
Thunderbolts
thing,
thematically a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, I was kind of mixed on Hawkeye, but after seeing Thunderbolts and just seeing the continuation of Yelena's arc, it made me appreciate Hawkeye a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think before going into Thunderbolts, I would have put something like Ms. Marvel ahead of Hawkeye, but now I'm not so sure. I think I might like switch those two at the very least, and even some of these others.
Yeah, Hawkeye has some of the highest highs of the Marvel shows for me, especially if we're removing WandaVision and Loki out of the equation, because those are easily the best two. But Hawkeye and like how he addresses his grief and guilt, especially, I think is really, really good. That to me is the Marvel TV side at its very best.
Yeah. Also, kudos to Jeremy Renner for defending himself, given the recent news of how much money he was offered to come back for season 2. What did he say?
Go take a hike.
I think his exact words was like, he was, for context, he was offered apparently half the money of season 1 to come back. And he said, why? Because I got run over. I'm only half a Jeremy now.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. I really do.
Yeah.
He has every right to push back in the way that he did.
I agree. I agree. But like as like a cathartic send off to that character, and I don't know if we needed a season 2 with Hawkeye anyway. I would have.
Yeah.
I wish that it was the conclusion of the character was more about the artistry and the crystallization of that character more so than we don't want to pay him enough money.
Yeah.
Even though we offered him more money to come back. I wish it was less that and more so we've just finished that character. Because I think the show itself crystallized it impeccably.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to see Hawkeye back anyway, just from a narrative storytelling perspective. I guess it depends on where Doomsday goes and Secret Wars, and does the stakes of those films make sense for a Hawkeye to come back? Then I could see them wanting, needing to include Renner and all of that. But generally, I think Clint and his emotional closure works impeccably in that show.
Yeah,
which
I
love.
agree. It's a well-performed show. I some of the Kingpin stuff I'm a little bit iffy on, but I think that's just maybe more of how he's integrated from a narrative standpoint. But I think pretty much the whole dynamic between Jeremy Renner and Florence Pugh when she comes into the show, I think is really good. Even her dynamic with Haley Steinfeld, I think, is great too.
I agree. And honestly, like, again, I'm going to exclude in Loki and WandaVision from this because those two clearly are on different.
They're kind of on another level, yeah.
But the rest of these, it's all going to be some sort of level of it doesn't work, but
it has.
And how big is the but?
It's just which ones have the higher highs, which ones have the lower lows? Do they have more higher highs?
They're all flawed, sometimes severely flawed.
I think Ms. Marvel might be the most frustrating one out of all these Disney Plus shows. It starts off so well. It starts off so well. I think the first 2 episodes are wonderful.
Yeah.
But man, like, I think if any of these shows are most like restricted by that 6-episode format and they suffer because of it, Ms. Marvel is the biggest one. When it gets that finale, it just falls apart. It falls apart in those final 2 episodes, I think.
No, I agree. Ms. Marvel and Echo are two of my least favorite. And it's unfortunate because I really like the characters. I think
Yeah.
Aman Vanali is amazing as Kamala.
Yeah.
Really, really good.
And-
And I adore her in the Marvel's film.
Yeah.
She's so charming and endearing there.
Even-
and
yeah.
I love the whole family. I think is so charming and fun. Like there is a lot to like about the show from like an endearing perspective, from an entertainment perspective. But
Yeah.
again, there's always the but.
Well, and I think Ms. Marvel has the biggest butt
Yeah.
because those first 2 episodes, which I think were both directed by Adil and Bilal, who are most known now for directing the recent Bad Boys films.
Yeah.
Those first 2 episodes of Ms. Marvel, I remember watching it for the first time thinking, wow, does Disney Plus finally have a major hit Marvel show? And then it concludes like, oh, nope, we're doing the same thing again. Not good. It's not good.
Yeah.
But man, like it starts off so well, so promising.
Yeah. Yeah. And I kind of feel the same way about Aliqua Cox. I'm not sure how to say her name, forgive me.
Mhm.
But Maya Lopez and Echo. It's a show that is extremely promising. I love the character. I love the relationship with Fisk. Foundationally, like fundamentally, there are some really endearing things about it. I just don't think the execution is there for that show.
Yeah.
It
That's-
just doesn't come together.
Yeah. Echo is definitely one of those that I feel like that one felt kind of directionless to me. By the time it started and by the time it ended, it's the one that felt like there was the least conviction for. It just felt. I hate to use the word inconsequential because I sometimes use that word as a praise for a Marvel property when it's not really restricted by the plot lines that came before or after it. But
Yeah.
Echo feels functionally inconsequential, almost like the makers of it just didn't really care about it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess ironically, it just would have worked better as a family drama because the
Yeah.
familiar stuff I do think is good, but the Marvel of it all is not great.
That should have just been its own self-contained movie. There's no reason for that
Yeah.
extended story to be a
Yeah.
6-episode show or however many episodes it was.
Yeah. But I can see why they didn't see the appeal as a movie either.
Hmm.
But this is the problem with these Disney Plus shows. And it
Yeah.
all circles back to the Marvel problem over these last 2 phases, circling back to Feige's comments over the weekend, where he's talking about all of this felt like homework. We were doing too much. I couldn't have my hands in all of these pots,
Yeah.
which comes down to having to satisfy the Disney stockholders. That's what all of this came down to.
Yeah.
We got to get those subscribers on Disney Plus up. We got to keep those stockholders happy.
They were looking at those short-term numbers, and that's the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah, and that's the only, like that was the direction from Bob Iger. We need more content. We got to satisfy Disney Plus, and of course, it stretched Feige thin. And
Yeah.
as a result, you get a bunch of middling TV shows that aren't very good, which makes the ones that are good stand out all the more.
Yeah.
A miracle that we got at least some good shows out of it.
Yeah. And I'm not opposed to getting more Marvel shows, but I am opposed to getting, what was it, like when phases 4 and 5 were at the height of their releasing powers. We
Mhm.
get 3 movies a year and then 3 new shows a year. That's just ridiculous. That's just ridiculous.
And it did get ridiculous, and it's at its most ridiculous with Secret Invasion, a show that had the highest stakes, the biggest consequences of all of these shows, that failed so miserably that it has not infiltrated into the films quite yet, despite what happens in that show being absolutely massive as far as the progression of the MCU, which nobody talks about.
Yeah.
But all of that is a consequence of Feige being stretched more so than Mr. Fantastic himself. And it's crazy.
Nice analogy. Oh my
Thank you.
gosh.
And it's crazy because that's a show that has, of course, Samuel L. Jackson, Don Cheadle, Kobe Smulders is back, Martin Freeman is in the show. Who else? I know Ben Mendelsohn was the other one I was trying to think of.
Yeah.
It has
You also have Olivia Colman. You have Amelia Clark.
Coleman. Yes. You have an incredible cast. Some pivotal characters to the MCU.
Kingsley
with-
Benadir was in that too. I forgot about that.
Yes. A remarkable cast. Remarkable cast with recurring characters that we've been with since the very beginning, including Rhodey and Nick Fury and Kobe Smulders' character. The name is escaping me at the moment.
Maria Hill.
Maria Hill, thank you.
Yeah.
And then what happens with Maria Hill in that first episode? Unforgivable.
It's the way it's handled. I don't necessarily mind that happening to that character. It's just the way that it's handled is so anticlimactic and emotionless, honestly.
Totally emotionless. And just everything that unfolds over that series, just huge consequentially, felt nothing, hollow, completely empty of a show.
It's just bad filmmaking, honestly.
Yeah, terrible. But again, the main point in bringing that up is what you were saying as far as they're just the Marvel being rudderless because they're being forced to do more thanks to economics. It's ridiculous. Yeah. And Daredevil Born Again is a little bit of that as well, where that show is being pulled in one direction, probably because Bob Iger was wanting it to be a certain way. It wasn't working. We had to do a whole lot of reshoots. And that show, when it's good, it's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
But also, boy, you can tell when the reshoots are merging with its original production.
You can feel that it's being held by Scotch tape or something like that.
Yes.
And because of that hit or miss kind of feeling with most of these films and even TV shows, I'm looking at my MCU ranking list on Letterboxd right now, which I guess in total, not including Daredevil Born Again, we've got 48 things that the MCU has given us in both film form and Disney Plus form. And of those, that also includes some of their one-off shorts like Werewolf by Night or the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special, both of which are actually, those are kind of interesting. I actually found those to be pretty intriguing.
I do. I like them too. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting. If I look at trying to rank all of these things, I basically have my top 25 of the nearly 50, the bottom 5 that are very clear, and the rest in between is like, I don't care. I don't have the energy.
No, I think that's perfectly fair. But I think it's because we've got, phase 4 and 5. Clearly, some of it was a result of the pandemic. That's when the creation of Disney Plus came into existence, and the stockholders somewhat taking creative control over Marvel. And look, it's indicative of exactly what you just said. It leaves a lot of people feeling kind of stuck in the middle as far as Marvel goes. There's been very little excitement with Marvel over these last few years, and hopefully Thunderbolts begins to change that a little bit. But part of the direction going forward is at least we have an end goal now. There's an end game, if you will.
We
know what the end game is.
We know what it is.
Phase 4, we had no idea other than there was going to be a multiversal angle. Eventually, we were going to introduce Kang, and which they eventually did, but then they had to pivot, including the Jonathan Majors of it all. We had to shift gears. And it's not just indicative of the films, it's the TV shows. I say all of that to say, we all know that. If Thunderbolts is the pivot point into moving forward, and let's say Fantastic Four is another example of, we know where we're going, so the vision has allowed us to make something that is good.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that is also the case for the TV shows moving forward, if they continue to do them.
Which I think they will, but let's find the right rhythm.
Yeah.
And
Because again, outside of the obvious ones, WandaVision, and even with WandaVision and Loki, though that was the beginning of the process. So it makes sense that those are the two out of the gate that are really good, because those are the first ones we're making. Of course, we're going to put a lot of attention into them.
It's kind of like how you and I would go to bat for Phase 1, not just back when it was first coming out, but we always went to bat for those movies. And now looking back on them now in context with where the MCU went, I mean, some of the best movies that Marvel ever gave us were in Phase 1.
Yeah, exactly. So no shock at all that WandaVision and Loki are really good. And there's been a few other good ones along the way, as we just talked about. But I am hoping that now that we know where we're going in all of this, that the TV shows are able to align themselves in a similar way, quality-wise.
Yeah.
Assuming that they've learned their lessons. And we'll see.
Yeah, well, it'll be either did they learn their lesson, or did they learn their lesson and they're willing to write the checks for it?
That's a good question. It's a good question.
I feel like they had to have learned their lesson. It's just whether or not they're going to pay for that lesson or not.
And look, we'll find out. I mean, obviously, with Phase 6, we're going to get Doomsday and Secret Wars. There's a Spider-Man movie along the way. I think recently it was announced that there's an Untitled movie that might also be involved with Phase 6. And on the TV side, you have Eyes of Wakanda, and I'm looking at Daredevil Born Again Season 2. So if they learn their lesson, and now that they have a direction, they know where they're going to take the character after the problems in the production of Season 1, I am hopeful for Season 2. Because when that Daredevil Born Again is just like every other thing that we've talked about on this episode.
Yeah.
When it's good, it is really good. When it's not good, yikes. It's different.
I say this as someone that hasn't watched Daredevil Born Again just yet. I have to get caught up on that. But I've heard the exact same thing from many people, as you just said there.
Yeah. I will say, the biggest revelation, out of Phase 5, maybe 4 as well. And I did not expect this, but I think I've gotten to the point that my favorite character in the MCU, or at the very least top 5, is the Punisher, is John Bernthal's iteration of that character.
Who doesn't love John Bernthal?
Every second he is on screen in Born Again, and I really liked his Netflix shows. I thought he was really great in those 2 seasons.
Yeah.
When he is on screen in Season 1 of Daredevil Born Again, absolutely steals every moment. He is so good as that character. He is so good.
He has always been a great scene stealer. That doesn't surprise me.
I found myself welling up every time he was on screen. Like that's cool. He's so good as that character. Remarkable.
That's cool. Yeah, I got to get caught up with it.
Yeah, I very much heard you too.
All right.
Like it's worth watching for the MCU of it all. There's going to be a lot of Fisk questions moving forward. And we brought it up a little bit in our Thunderbolts review. And I assume most people know this even if they haven't seen it, but Fisk becomes mayor of New York. That's kind of important in the context of the MCU, where a lot of things happen in New York. So,
it's like, where is he in all of this?
It's going to leave people wandering. We'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah. Like I said in that review, New York is big, but it's not that big.
Yeah. No, that's very fair. Especially given where the MCU has gone. We've gone cosmic. We've gone to the multiverse.
You can go
like little New York City is.
And I hope stop going anywhere we want when it comes to phases 7, 8, and whatever comes next.
Yeah. We shall see. We shall see.
Should we
all right.
do a recap of our consensus ranking just to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. Why don't you lay it on us?
All right, so JD and I, our consensus ranking for the MCU films post-Endgame are at number 14. I'll go from bottom up. Number 14, Thor: Love and Thunder. Number 13, Captain America: Brave New World. Number 12, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Number 11, Deadpool and Wolverine. Number 10, Spider-Man: Far From Home. Number 9, Black Widow. Number 8, The Marvels. Number 7, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Number 6, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Number 5, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Number 4, Eternals. Number 3, Spider-Man: No Way Home. Number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And then number 1, The New Avengers, a.k.a. Thunderbolts **.
Hell yeah. I love that. I love that our 1 through 7 was almost verbatim the same.
Yeah,
so
few order
funny.
changes here and there, but I mean, I guess it just goes to show what Marvel is doing right and what they're not doing right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and even after this conversation, when I look at the changes that I'm going to make to my own personal list, we're even closer
Yeah.
to each other in those in that first 7.
Yeah.
So funny to me. At any rate, that was really fun. I'm really looking forward to Fantastic Four. How does this change?
Yeah. And then
If
we
it changes anything
we
at all.
revisit this exercise yet again.
Yeah. If you agree or disagree with anything we had to say, leave a comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, reach out to us. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. You can always email us InSessionFilm@gmail.com. We'll go ahead and wind down the show for this week. We, of course, have a review of Thunderbolts. It is available right now. Go and check it out. It was a really, really fun conversation. We will also give a review to the sequel, Another Simple Favor. That should be a really fun conversation. Knowing how I feel about it and how Brennan feels about it, regardless of where you land on the film, maybe a conversation worth tuning in for. I think there's
Well,
gonna be
yeah.
some fun
Yeah.
to be had.
It's either going to be a really short conversation or a really long one.
We'll see. We'll see where that goes, but I think there's going to be fun to be had. So be on the lookout for that. New women in session this weekend as well, as always. So make sure you tune in for whatever the ladies have in store for you. Always love what they're up to. Lately, it's, late April, early May. Perfect time to talk about witches and vampires, which is what they've been doing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, never a bad time to talk about witches and vampires. So yeah,
That
they're
should be a
having a lot of
t-shirt
fun.
right there.
That's also a good shirt. With all of that said, stay tuned for great writing on the website. I love what our staff is always up to. Dave and the
absolutely.
writers always doing good stuff. InSessionFilm.com. Be on the lookout for that as well. Anything else, Brendan, before we get out of here?
Man, I'm really curious what Fantastic Four is going to give us now. I
I
really,
am curious.
I just hope it's good. I just hope it's good, and that they have, they being Marvel, have consistency and quality
Yeah.
for once.
I agree. I'm really looking forward to it as well. As a final thought, no tariffs. Get rid of that nonsense. No tariffs on movies. Janus Films is not the enemy. Criterion is not the enemy. Let's get rid of that nonsense altogether. No tariffs. Also, don't let your stockholders make creative decisions. I think that's the lesson we've all learned.
I feel like we've been saying that for 50 years in the movie
Yeah.
business, and it's just never
Yeah.
changed.
Let your artist make the decisions. That tends to work out more so than it doesn't. So that's the moral of the story. And go see Thunderbolts. It's really good. It's really, really good. Go see it if you haven't already. I can't wait to see it again. So with all of that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the InSession Film Podcast. Come on, Fantastic Four.
Happy belated May the 4th be with you.